So this morning we wrap up our River Life 2034 value series, and we're going to talk about our very last value today. But before we do, I just want to quickly review the 5 other values that we've talked about. And so you can find this all on our website. It's on riverlifemn.com. And again, I am memorizing them as we go. But the first value that we learned about 5 weeks ago is that we apprentice under Jesus. That following Jesus is what we're doing, becoming like him, doing the things that he did is our goal. Our second value is that we are ministers of restoration. We believe that through Jesus, God gave us Jesus to restore our relationship with him and calls us to join in on his work, to be ambassadors, to share this healing, this hope that we get to live out with them as well too, so that they can restore their relationship with God and then restore their relationships with others. Third week, we learned about we have an abundance mindset, that instead of a scarcity mindset that some of us can relate to, of feeling that we don't have enough, we trust that God provides us with more than enough. And so we live with open hands. We freely and generously give, serve, trusting that God will provide us with whatever we need to bless others. A couple weeks ago, we learned about entrusting the next generation, that the young people of today, the students and the kids, are not the church of tomorrow, but they have the church of today, that we invest in them, that we empower them, that we entrust them with meaningful opportunities to serve in the church. Last week, we talked about how we are courageously transparent. We believe that the community, the church, is built on honesty, vulnerability, and grace. And so instead of hiding our struggles, instead of hiding our sins and living in shame, that we are transparent with each other, confessing our weaknesses, confessing our struggles, that God may heal us and heal others. This brings us to our very last value, that we have fun together. We have fun together. This is something that's really special and unique to River Life. But if I'm honest with you, as I was prepping the sermon this week, I felt like this one was probably the hardest value to justify, because there isn't a verse or a passage in the Bible that says, "Thou shalt have fun." It'd been so easy if that was one of God's commandments. Thou shalt have fun. So if I'm completely transparent, my own insecurities around this is, what will other believers, what will other pastors, what will other theologians think of us? That we are intersecting fun and church together, that fun is one of our values that drive our mission, experiencing God together. Church is generally known to be serious because we're here to worship God, and it's supposed to be respectful and formal. And fun isn't respectful or formal. It's very casual. It's very lenient. Church thinkers have a popular saying. Some church thinkers have a popular saying that goes like this: what you win them with, you win them to. What you win them with, you win them to. And so essentially it means that whatever tactics you use to attract someone to church, you have to maintain or elevate those qualities to keep them engaged or committed to church. And so my fear is that the pushback we could receive, or the pushback that I might receive, is that if we're all about fun and we're not about being serious, we'll need to keep on having fun to keep you here. Now, again, like I said, I think River Life is unique and special because it is fun. And so as I was wrestling with this over the past week, the image I had that kept on replaying in my head was from one of my favorite movies, from the character. His name's Petey, and so it's the movie's Remember the Titans. And so there's this scene where all the football players are gathered in the gym, waiting to see who their new coach is. And Petey is this fun-filled athlete who's excited about football season. But when coach steps in, coach isn't fun at all. And coach is played by Denzel Washington. And so if you know Denzel's got a pretty straight face. And I'm going to show a clip in here a little bit. But when coach steps in, again, Petey's left feeling like, I don't know, should football be fun? And so let's play this clip here real quick just to capture what I was feeling this week as I was prepping for this. And so.
Put your hand down. You smiling?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Why are you smiling?
Because I love football. Football's fun.
Fun, sir.
Fun, sir.
It's fun.
Yes.
You sure?
I think.
Now you're thinking. First you smile, then you think. You think football is still fun.
Yes.
Sir.
Yes. No.
No?
Sir. Well, it was fun.
Not anymore, though, is it? Is it?
No, not by
No, it's not fun anymore. Not even a little bit.
No.
Make up your mind.
No.
Think. Since you're thinking now, go on, think.
No,
Is
no.
it fun?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
Absolutely not?
Zero fun, sir.
All right, listen up. I'm Coach Boone. I'm going to tell you all about how much fun you're going to have this season.
So replace football with fun, and that was me this whole week, where I'm like, church is fun. And then in my mind, my own securities, it's like, is church supposed to be fun? Like, how can we biblically justify this? So similar to Coach Boone's philosophy of football not being fun, the church has had a history of just being serious and not fun. So here's a brief history describing how the church became serious. And so around the 4th century, Christianity was legalized in the Roman Empire. Believers were no longer persecuted because of their faith, but they were concerned of the worldly distractions. And so now that they were accepted into society, they were afraid that things would, the influences of society would compromise their faith. And so they voluntarily experienced suffering as a spiritual practice. Some of them even withdrew to the desert and lived as hermits, practicing self-denial and solitary. Generally, they believed that their lifestyle and their voluntary discomfort and pain would earn God's favor in reflecting Jesus' suffering, and so they lived that life, overlooking that that it's God's grace that leads us to be in favor with Him, not our discomfort, not our self-denial acts. Though they are good, again, it's not those things that make us right with God. It's the grace that God gives us that makes us right with God. Now, if we fast forward thousands of years later to the 16th century, the Protestant Reformation placed great emphasis on sin and repentance, which led to a more serious atmosphere in the church. And again, there's nothing wrong with emphasizing that, because those are pillars of what we believe in, that we are sinful, that we need to repent. Those are pillars. Those are things that Jesus talked about. But the Protestant Reformation comes in, and before the Protestant Reformation, we just had the Catholic Church, and so they're like, like all these unnecessary rituals and celebrations that we have, we don't need to do them. Like, they're not important. And so then worship was more serious rather than celebratory. Again, which carries on to current day churches, and then you get Hmong churches. And so if you layer the Hmong culture on top of the Hmong church, I mean, you ask anybody, Hmong doesn't scream fun. You go to a public setting, a public formal setting in a Hmong setting, it doesn't scream fun. It's serious. And so, again, with the Hmong churches being modeled after the American church, again, zero fun. Fun gets sucked out of church. And so again, like I said, while I can appreciate the importance of being serious about God by honoring Him, I think it's also worth considering both sides. When I step back and think about my time at River Life, it's been a uniquely fun experience. Oftentimes when people ask me, hey, how's the BP campus going? I'll often say it's one of the most fun things I've done in ministry. It might even be one of the most fun things I've done in my life. I've even received text messages from some of you who have conveyed the idea that River Life is fun. Things like, my kids don't want to leave church. I think about our egg hunt last year and how fun it was serving our community. Fun is uniquely a part of who we are and has helped me grow in my faith. And I think it's essential. It's an essential value to support us in fulfilling our mission of experiencing God together. And so as I was wrestling through this, I think the problem is the definition of fun. I think the problem is the definition of fun. And so oftentimes I think when we think of fun, we associate it with entertainment, amusement, and pleasure. And while those things are fun, to be entertained, to be amused, to experience pleasure, I don't think it quite describes the fun that we're talking about here at River Life. And so when we talk about fun at River Life, at least in my perspective, how I understand fun at River Life, it's a refreshing perspective on faith, which then causes us to examine it in a different way. Attending River Life has caused me to feel like I have a refreshed perspective on my spirituality, on my faith with Jesus, and so it's allowed me to think of approaching it a different way, which has been fun. Fun at River Life has stimulated me to engage with my faith, to experience God's joy. And so again, instead of going through the routines, I feel like every Sunday I'm expecting to be stimulated in a way where I'm like, man, how can I engage with God? How can I engage with my spirituality that allows me to experience God's joy and God's promises? Fun at River Life is wrestling through challenging things that then motivate me to grow in my faith. Again, it's challenging me to take different steps to experience growth, to experience faith. Fun at River Life has been an invigorating experience with God's truth that causes us then to experience His promises. I mean, the closest thing I can relate to is a couple weeks ago, I was fixing a sink, and being a non-homeowner who's lived in rented places all my life, I haven't had to fix any of these things. And so as I was fixing the sink, I was like, oh, I'm stuck here. I need to run to Home Depot to grab a tool. Come back home, I go, man, this tool works. This is kind of fun. And then I run into another problem, I'm like, shoot, I got to go back to Home Depot. I go grab another tool, and I bring back, I'm like, man, this makes things so much easier. And so in the midst of frustration, in finding the right tools, I had fun swapping out a sink. And so in the same way, I think fun is the sense that here at River Life, at least for me, I've been challenged. I've experienced a fresh perspective of faith where it's caused me to want to grow more in my faith. I really think it's difficult to commit to something that you don't enjoy. I remember working at banks, and I hated working at banks, but supposedly I was very good at it. So when I quit, it was probably one of the only jobs that called me back and like, hey, we got a position for you. I'm like, the one job that I don't like, I get a call back asking me to go back and work for them. I'm like, what? And so again, I think it's really difficult to commit to something if we don't enjoy it. I think there has to be a level of fun, a level of enjoyment involved in it. Otherwise, we don't do it. There is a sense of fun and enjoyment about this that keeps us committed to be here. Again, it isn't fun in the sense of being entertained or amused, but fun in the sense that we are engaged in things about God that let us enjoy Him more. So when I think of this, I think about the early church and how they survived persecution by enjoying God. In Acts 5, we're told that the apostles healed the sick, but then they were arrested and imprisoned for sharing the gospel. They were eventually flogged and then ordered not to speak about Jesus, and then they were let go. In Acts chapter 5, verse 41 through 42, it tells us this. After they were let go, the apostles, well, this was right when they were about to let go. This is what it says. The apostles left the Sanhedrin rejoicing because they had been counted worthy of suffering disgrace for the name. Day after day in the temple courts and from house to house, they never stopped teaching and proclaiming the good news that Jesus is Messiah. So they had just gotten flogged. They got beaten by the Sanhedrin, and they rejoiced because they had been counted worthy of their name. Again, if you had gotten beaten up for something that you believed in, say like the Green Bay Packers, just kidding. I love all my Green Bay Packer friends. But imagine if you got beaten up for something that you felt so important to you. Would you then like rejoice? Like, oh yeah, I got beaten up for that, The apostles rejoiced after being whipped for preaching the gospel. They rejoiced because they were considered worthy to suffer because of their faith in Jesus. They engaged with Jesus' commands and experienced what He promised them. That led them to be joyful that their faithfulness was making an impact. It was doing the things that Jesus had promised. They were experiencing what Jesus told them they would expect. So it caused them to be joyful. It caused them to want to do it more. I think there was a layer of fun in there that, again, what we did was impactful. Similarly, if we turn a little further into the New Testament, Philippians is an entire letter where Paul talks about rejoicing while suffering. And so Paul wrote Philippians while he was imprisoned for sharing the gospel, but he writes to the church encouraging them to be joyful. While joy is often described as an inner gladness, looking forward to God's promises regardless of the situation, I feel like it was evident that Paul wasn't just looking forward to a future gladness, but there was an immediate gladness that he had. And so Paul described that joy that his ministry, his preaching of the gospel could lead to death. Now, a lot of times when we hear about something leading us to death, we're like, oh, okay, we're going to back up. But Paul knew that his ministry could lead to death, but he rejoiced, saying that means he would get to be with Jesus. If I preach the gospel and I die, I would get to be with Jesus. That's awesome. And then Paul also says, but it could also lead to me living and being with you and experiencing God's joy and seeing you grow. And so for Paul, I think it was an immediate sense of gladness that, again, if I'm preaching the gospel, it might cost me my life, but I get to be with Jesus, and so I rejoice. But it might cause me to continue to live. I might not die, but I get to see you grow in your faith, and that brings me joy. Paul was so overfilled with joy because either option would allow him to enjoy Jesus more. Now, if we fast forward 1,500 years later, I think the Westminster Confession of Faith captures this well. And so the Westminster Confession of Faith is like the Apostles' Creed that we read off earlier. It's a summary of core Christian beliefs for some Christian traditions. And one of the truths listed in the confession reveals humanity's purpose, or what they think humanity's purpose is. And so this is what they say. The question that they ask is this: what is the chief end of man? Ultimately, what is man's purpose? And the answer is this: man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Today, pastors like John Piper have taken this point, made it a major theme in their ministries with slogans like, God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. And so there's this sense of enjoyment, of satisfaction, again, of being engaged in Jesus and what he has for us. And so again, the theme of enjoying God is present. So again, it points to the sense of fun that I think we embody and that we want to embody. Now, one thing that has been helpful connecting fun in church that was helpful this week as I was studying was the theology of joy. And so in a nutshell, the theology of joy states that we were created to experience joy or true happiness. And so we spend our lives seeking it in all sorts of places. This might be your hobby. This might be, your passion. This is something that you like to do. But again, the premise is that we spend our lives seeking it in all sorts of places, but true happiness is rooted in God. And true happiness is rooted in God because God is happy about himself. And so that struck a chord in me. We're like, man, like God is happy in himself? I mean, makes sense then, because if God is absolutely happy in who he is and his characteristics and his attributes, then he is the true source of joy. And so our purpose then is to pursue that joy in him, to pursue that happiness in him. So that's why I think the fruit of the Spirit, one of the fruit of the Spirit is joy. That's listed in Galatians. It's a reality that we get to experience God's joy when we believe in Jesus. It helps us anticipate what that full joy will be like when we get to be with him. That's why joy is also linked with salvation. When the angels announced the birth of Jesus in Luke chapter 2, the angels said that it brought joy to all people. That's why joy is possible even in suffering. In the midst of trials, believers can rejoice because suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character. Character produces hope. A hope is an anticipation of something good in the future that's going to happen to you. We find that in Romans chapter 5. That's why joy is meant to be experienced communally. Joy wasn't meant to be a private experience, but it's meant to be experienced together. We get that in Acts chapter 2 of how the church shared the things with each other. They were full of joy, full of, again, God's joy, God's peace, and so they continued to share the gospel with other people. And that's why joy is going to be experienced when we get to heaven. In God's kingdom, we will experience everlasting joy, the fullness of joy, God's complete joy. The theology of joy is a rich perspective that reveals to us our reality is based on fully enjoying God and not the temporary worldly fun that we associate joy or we associate fun with. So that's why I think it's absolutely necessary that our value here at River Life is that we have fun together. Because when we have fun together, when we seek God's joy, when we seek how he is happy about himself, and we seek that, and we all experience that together, it helps us experience God together. So what are ways that we can experience this practically, day in and day out? I found an article by a researcher named Catherine Price who offers this thought about true fun. And so oftentimes when we think about fun, we think about playing our favorite game on our phone or watching YouTube, our favorite YouTube videos, or maybe binge watching our favorite show on Netflix, whatever it may be. But Catherine Price offers this thought that true fun is a union of playfulness, connection, and flow. She defines playfulness as a spirit of lightheartedness and freedom, of doing an activity just for the sake of doing the activity and not caring about the outcome. Our outcome is focused on Jesus, but I think this idea of lightheartedness and freedom, I experience that here at River Life, that we are all very lighthearted. We are all very playful, that we can engage in conversations with each other rather easily. And so, again, this idea that we are playful. And so one way that you can be playful is just to be present. Be yourself. Hang out in the lobby for the sake of just hanging out. Invite someone to lunch after service. Smile, laugh, share with each other the wonderful things that God's doing in your life. Those are just simple ways of, again, being playful. Connection, the second ingredient to experiencing true fun, happens when we share meaningful experiences with others. And so every Sunday, every day of the week, if you're part of a life group as well too, every week, every moment, you have the chance to connect not just with God, but with other people around you. And so find opportunities to stick around and connect deeper. That might be, again, a dinner with somebody, intentionally inviting someone over for dinner to be deeply connected to them. Maybe it's like, hey, I'm taking a walk. You want to take a walk with me and just have a conversation about something? Again, going a little deeper. Next week, we're going to have sermon discussion groups. This is a perfect place to connect deeper, to experience connection, where you stay after service or you find a day in the week and you talk about the sermon series or the sermon questions and go a little deeper besides the polite, hello, how you doing, how's your day been? You can join a group, a life group, or serve on a ministry team. Do something beyond Sunday morning that builds a deeper relationship. The last ingredient to experiencing true fun is flow. And flow is defined as a state of total engagement where you're so focused and so engaged in the activity that you lose track of time. When was the last time that you lost track of time at church? When was the last time that you lost track of time with someone here at church? I find that I have the most fun when I don't have to worry about time. And when we are finally done, we're like, man, I wish I had just 2-3 more hours. I wish that we had more time to be with each other. And so find opportunities where you can experience flow, where you just get lost in the activity. And if you're one like me who's afraid of time, where I'm like, man, I'm going to spend the next 3 hours with this person, like, what are we going to do? Again, challenge yourself to find opportunities to engage in things where, again, it can help you lose track of time and just be present, engaging in playful things and engaging in connection. These three combined help us experience a true fun with one another. And so I trust that if we do these things, it can help us enjoy our time with God, our time with each other more and more. When it comes to fun, I wouldn't want to take it away from River Life. Like I mentioned earlier, fun at River Life has been a refreshing perspective on my faith. It's caused me to examine how I relate with Jesus in a different way. Fun at River Life has stimulated me to engage with my faith so that I can experience His promises. Fun at River Life is wrestling through the challenging ideas, the challenging concepts that motivates me to grow in my faith. This sermon was one of them. Fun at River Life is an invigorating experience with God's truth that again allows us to experience his promises. Fun at River Life is an experience that has led me to enjoy God more and more. And so I encourage you to have fun in your relationship with Jesus, to have fun with each other, to have fun together so that we can experience God together. Let me pray for us.